In business today, three things to know. First, hammering away. Louisiana's embattled senator tries to get the Keystone Pipeline through Congress to the president. Mary Landrieu needs just one vote. Will she get it? Then, approval is at a new low, but signups are growing. Obamacare enters year 2 with that seemingly contradictory statement. And bad date, the dark side behind the business of all those online dating apps. Arise Exchange starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. It's down to the wire for the pipeline as Louisiana's Democratic senator trying to save her seat needs one more vote to get congressional approval of the Keystone XL pipeline, which will run from Canada through the U.S. to the Gulf of Mexico. The Republican House has already voted yes. The Senate, still in the control of Democrats until the new year, is voting tonight. In a moment, we'll speak with a group opposing the pipeline. Last week, you'll recall, we spoke with supporters. But first, Colin Campbell, Arise News senior Washington correspondent, joins us now with the latest on the vote. Colin, good afternoon. Bring us up to date.
Well, right now, Andrew, it looks like Mary Landrieu from Louisiana is really trying to get this all together. She's trying to pull together the last few votes to get this passed. Right now, as the count stands, she has 59 votes, but she needs 60 in order for this to pass through the Senate. So she's still working on that. So like you said before, it's down to the wire. She has just one last vote to put together. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid says he doesn't expect this bill to fail. However, if it does pass the Senate, the White House doesn't seem inclined to really get this through. Of course, President Obama is waiting for a lawsuit to be settled in Nebraska to see if this would really have a damaging environmental impact, aside from what proponents of the pipeline are saying. He also believes that the State Department should be going for this pipeline. He wants to see the State Department also approve this in a major way before he'll endorse it. So even if this goes through the Senate, it does not seem that likely that President Obama will pass it right now.
And I understand the State Department is involved here because it's going over a foreign country, basically. Otherwise, it would not need State Department approval. If the president is going to veto this, why not just pressure the Democrats to help one of their own and maybe hold on to a seat here? There's got to be a lot of pressure on Democrats right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Democrats really to help out Mary Landrieu, who's facing a tough runoff election next month against Bill Cassidy, Representative Bill Cassidy. So there is a lot of pressure on Democrats, but there's also a lot of pressure on President Obama because the proponents of the pipeline say this will create thousands of jobs, something that a lot of people want to help the economy. They say that these jobs will be sustainable, but there's a lot of data that proves otherwise, that it may create thousands of jobs in the beginning, but those would be temporary. The permanent jobs would only be about 35. At the same time, we've heard President Obama speak about creating more infrastructure since his first term. This would indeed do that if it was passed and was built, but not in the way that it's being built. The White House is really not for that. Again, this does come from Canada, but the extension of the pipeline would be about roughly 2,000 miles, maybe 1,700 miles or so. It's really an extension into the United States that's really at issue here, even because there's already an established pipeline coming from Canada. That would also, if this doesn't pass, that would force a lot of the oil to be transferred through rail cars and all the other types of transportation that could add to the cost of trying to transport this oil. So that's why a lot of people are really pushing for that right now, but the president is not willing to budge.
Okay, Colin Campbell in Washington, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let's turn now to Neil Bhatiya. He's policy associate at the Century Foundation. Century Foundation is opposing the building of the pipeline. Neil, welcome back to Arise Exchange. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
Okay, so the president hasn't said he's totally against the pipeline, as I understand. What is the process here as far as you understand it? He's really basically saying this is his decision and not Congress's right now.
Right. Specifically, he's saying it's the State Department decision. As you indicated, it's an international pipeline, so they have final approval over whether or not this goes through. Now, he has said before that he has put a carbon test on the pipeline, that if it significantly increases carbon emissions, then it's something he's going to oppose. I think from the outcome of this vote, what will happen next is that if it does go through, he'll end up vetoing it. It'll come back with a new Republican Senate. He'll veto it again. But at some point, he actually has to make a decision about whether this is going to go through.
And he's been debating this or deliberating now for his entire presidency, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's been very politically difficult for him. On the one hand, he sees climate change as a legacy of his, but on the other hand, you have fossil fuel state Dems like Mary Landrieu, who are,
they want the jobs.
Yeah, they want the jobs. They want the money that they think comes from the pipeline, and they want to see it built.
Is the opposition here over the idea that it is going to increase the use of fossil fuels in some way, or is it because there may be an oil spill? Pipelines are historically pretty safe. It's got to be safer than putting the oil on railroads.
Certainly, it's safer than putting it on
That's
railroads.
the option here.
I think for many in the environmental community, it's become sort of a statement larger than a pipeline itself, that it's actually something physical they can point to in the climate change debate and say, this is where we're going to draw a line in the sand. This is something we should not be doing. So let's throw our backs into it, put all our effort into defeating this thing.
But here's, I guess, where the friction is. The states that this pipeline goes through, for the most part, wants it because of the jobs that it will create. And the people opposing it are not necessarily impacted by the jobs. Is that a fair criticism?
It's a little bit. I mean, I will say that most of the estimates for the job growth, I think if you look at independent analysis, are a little off. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you will have a temporary bump in construction jobs because you actually have to build the thing. But I think pumping more oil from Canada into the United States in the aggregate is not going to have as much an impact on jobs as, say, if you tried to increase aggregate demand by raising wages.
Right, there's a temporary increase, and there's also the idea that this pipeline will not drive down oil prices.
Right. In some cases, it might drive it up. If you're looking at a place like the Midwest, which has been sloshing around with Canadian oil for a while, getting ready for this thing to be built, they've had a surplus of oil, and prices have been down versus the national average. And if you see the pipeline built, their prices will actually go up over time in at least the intermediate future. So the net effect nationwide probably won't be that significant.
Now, we have a map here, if we could show it, of a specific area that I guess environmentalists are most concerned about here. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. It looks like these are areas that if there were to be a spill, are the most environmentally sensitive. And obviously, people have long memories of the BP spill in the Gulf, of Exxon Valdez in Alaska. And so the idea of new oil infrastructure anywhere generates a lot of NIMBYism, not in my backyard, where they're very concerned. In many of these cases, they've had recent experience with hydraulic fracturing.
That's right.
Where they're worried about
accidents.
Worried about accidents, worried about what's happening to their groundwater.
Even though you oppose it, where do you think this is going to end up at the end of the day?
Honestly, it's hard to say. I think, on balance, the president might actually go through and approve it and say that, it'll temporarily help the economy, but there are other things that I'm doing currently, such as the EPA power plant rules, such as the deal that I made with the Chinese, that will more than counteract the emissions growth that could be projected from the pipeline.
And he can approve it and then let the next guy or woman worry about it in office.
Exactly.
Okay, Neil Bhatiya, Policy Associate at the Century Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A news record high on Wall Street. Let's take a look at the final numbers. The Dow closed at 17,687, up 40 and change. The S&P 500, that's a record as well, to 2051.80. And the NASDAQ up 31.44 to 47.02, closing in on that 5,000 mark. We have not seen that in about 14 years. Some of the top stocks we're watching today. Home Depot says the improving job market helped beat sales expectations. EPS, though, of $1.12 missed expectations by a penny. Home Depot closing down 2 and change. Manchester United posted a lower revenue after one of the team's worst seasons. Profits slid 10% for the football team in the first season. Manchester United closing down 15 cents. Target partnering with Kaiser Permanente to open healthcare clinics in 4 Southern California chains. Target up 41 cents. And taking a look at commodities. Gold up $13 to $11.96. Oil sliding again back down under $75 a barrel, down $1.35. Some economic news. The producer price index unexpectedly rose 0.2% in October on rising services costs. The Fed will closely watch that number. That is inflation at the wholesale level, as they like to tell us. Meantime, increased buyer traffic through model homes boosted home builder confidence. That went up in November. Coming up, is Obamacare the plan we love to hate? Its popularity falls, but enrollments are up. You're watching Arise Xchange. Stay with us.
There is a reason Africa is called the new frontier. What was once potential is now an opportunity ready to be seized. Once revered for our resources, today's wealth lies in our people. People who build the cities that shape the future. People who know an idea in one place means business in another. A generation for whom technology means there are no borders, no boundaries. We are the new lions in a brave new world, kings of the urban jungle. And there's a bank that puts the world in our pocket and the future in our hands. UBA, Africa's global bank.
Last week on Arise, Republicans will control more states than they have since the 1920s. This is pretty much a tidal wave of republicanism. Imagine receiving a pension after just 5 years on the job. How do you get that job? Well, you get elected to Congress. You may have seen this commercial for DirecTV. A group called the Shy Bladder Group is complaining to DirecTV that the ad is offensive. DirecTV told them to take a joke. Watch this week for more Arise Exchange. And welcome back to Arise Exchange. Year 2 for the Affordable Care Act begins with fewer glitches, more enrollments, and less popularity than ever. Just 37% of Americans approve of so-called Obamacare. That's 1% worse than last January, according to Gallup. And 56% disapprove of the health care law altogether. So where do we stand with two seemingly contradictory statements? Alan Murray is the CEO of Care Connect Insurance, which is part of New York's North Shore Long Island Jewish Health System, and joins us here on Arise Exchange. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
What accounts right now for these terribly low ratings on the Affordable Care Act? 36%. The country hates it.
You know, I think a lot of it has to do with the word Obamacare. People have become so sensitized to that word through the news, through publications, that it doesn't necessarily translate, though, into the experience. You know, from what I've seen, especially here in New York, people seem to be very satisfied with the product. So, you know, in terms of the word Obamacare, as I said, lots of people worried about it, lots of people with different opinions. You turn around and look at the satisfaction of the people who have actually purchased insurance here, very different.
Is it because the New York Exchange, and New York runs its exchange, is simply better than the other exchanges?
So I don't necessarily think that's the reason. I think even if you go to other exchanges in other markets, there are people who are satisfied with what they're getting. Obviously, there are people who may have had different experiences. New York is probably a differentiator. You know, last year, before the Affordable Care Act took place, only 17,000 people had it.
Okay, but this is where people are getting hung up on. I know a woman, for example, who was very happy with her health plan on the exchange that she got last year. She travels between New York and another state. Yeah. New York, according to her, no longer permits her doctors elsewhere to be part of the system. It seems like there's some shifting ground underneath of people's expectations.
Yeah, so I think as part of the exchanges, you've seen a large movement into narrower networks, more select networks. And part of that is in essence, a trade-off between the cost of the benefit plans and how in essence, insurance companies and other build, you know, the premium dollars, and balancing that against large access. So you as an individual, you're going to have to make some value decisions in terms of whether or not you want to go into local health plans or national health plans. That, though, is, I guess, one of the key components within that decision matrix.
Now, I understand you help people either go through the exchange and the Affordable Care Act basically plan, or to find their own private plans. How do you make the difference about where people are going? And what's better for them?
Of course. You know, in terms of the Affordable Care Act and its application here in New York, it's kind of like uncharted waters. My background, actually, I was formerly an officer in the British Merchant Marine, so I tend to think about that.
As you told us, a Liverpool fan, I believe,
and a Liverpool fan, not a Man U fan. I will try not to comment on the reduction in stock price. You know, but when you think about it like that, going into these exchanges is uncharted waters. There are people out there that are going through it for the first time. when we used to go into new ports, we used to get the local pilot on board so that we could find a way to get through that. You need a navigator. You need somebody to really help understand the key subtleties.
But most people don't have that. So here are my questions, because we're running out of time. The first is, are the exchanges nationwide easier to access, and the national one, than last year? Is that process getting better?
They're easier to access. There's been a lot more time for them to prepare for the way people access them, which is important, so people's journeys through them. So the answer to that is yes.
If you are in the system right now, are you paying more or less for your insurance when you renew this year?
That depends completely on what you had last year. So the main point here I will advise people on is make sure you shop around, because your individual premium may go up double digits, it may be going down, but you may be getting value if you shop around and you find the kind of subtleties between the different plans that are available.
37% or so approval rating right now, 5 years. Where do you think that number is going to be? A majority of Americans going to like this?
I think this will become part of the habit of the way Americans purchase health insurance. So I think it will increase up, providing that the exchanges continue to have the flexibility to offer great plans, and we don't get too many kind of guardrails that prevent the public and the insurance companies from offering the plans the consumers actually are wanting.
Alan Murray, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Very welcome.
Time now for our business ticker stories making headlines across the nation and the world. Energy grids are hacking targets. 79 incidents were investigated this year, according to the Department of Homeland Security. Although that sounds alarming, this is down from 145 incidents last year. Experts say that the fear of service disruptions ends up delaying much-needed technology upgrades. Hacking is also on the top of the mind for Congress, as Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts goes after banks again. The Democrats sent letters today to 16 banks, including Citigroup and U.S. Bank, requesting data on recent breaches. The government also wants to know how charge cards issued by these banks and used by the General Services Administration, part of the government, may have been impacted. Ford recalls its best-selling car, the Fusion. It says the key can be removed from the ignition without the car being in the park position. This affects about 65,000 2014 and 2015 models sold in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Ford is unaware, it says, of any injuries or crashes. And a historic payday for a Miami slugger. The Miami Marlins signed Giancarlo Stanton to a 13-year, $325 million contract. $325 million contract. That's the largest sports contract in North America. The 25-year-old will make $68,000 per day, or roughly $2,800 an hour, as the Marlins try to boost stadium attendance and viewership. And finally, in headlines, call it Marley Marijuana. The family of reggae legend Bob Marley partners with a private equity firm to offer pot-based creams, vaporizers, and Jamaican cannabis under the name Marley Natural. By the way, Bob Marley ranks 5th on Forbes' 2014 list of the highest paid dead celebrities, still earning $20 million a year. Coming up, a former Major League Baseball star plans to sell part of himself online. That makes him our favorite person of the day.
If I was building my own news network, first thing I think I'd want high-quality reporters, very educated, intelligent people.
Hello, I'm Francesca Maxime.
I'm Julian Phillips.
I'm Wendy Gillette.
I'm Sophia Song Hai.
I'm Gary Anthony Ramsey. Thank you for joining us here in New York City.
I would like to see more people of color represented in high positions in media.
We've got world-class journalists, veteran journalists who have been in this industry for decades, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes as well.
People need to understand the problems that are going on in the community are much closer than we actually think they are.
Kayla Phillips is one of the shoppers who is suing Barney's, and she is here with her attorney. What is it that you want from them?
Not to judge every African-American person that comes in your store.
Unrest continues in Ferguson, Missouri. Exactly what happened to Michael Brown Jr.'s memorial. The NFL fallout continues. Why does this video change the game? President Barack Obama met with congressional leaders today.
He does not need congressional approval to carry out the strikes.
The only language understood by killers like this is the language of force.
Do I want to have a draft? No, because I don't want to have war.
Hello and welcome to Arise America. I'm Debbie Turner-Bell.
Pull up to the bar for liquid lunch, an example of how not to manage your media coverage. A senior executive at Uber has a plan to keep reporters writing only glowing things about the on-demand car service company. Blackmail reporters. Emil Michael told a crowd of both investors and reporters, not very good to tell them this, at a dinner in New York that Uber should hire a team of opposition researchers to dig up dirt on unfriendly reporters. In particular, he recommended spreading details of the personal life of a female blogger who is the editor of the Silicon Valley website Pando Daily and has been critical of Uber. Michael now says he thought the conversation was off the record. Nonetheless, he claims he regrets the comments and that Uber does not actually aim to smear reporters. And that takes us to our favorite person of the day when we pick one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. Today, former Major League Baseball player Jose Canseco plans to give you his middle finger. Literally. Well, for a price. Canseco recently accidentally shot his finger while cleaning his gun. Then, during a poker tournament, he says that finger just fell off. That's one hell of a bluff during a poker game, by the way. So now the former Yankee plans to do what any person who loses a body part might do, sell it on eBay. Canseco tweeted, quote, "I will put the finger that fell off in the poker game on eBay for sale." Now, of course, on eBay, you need to add a description to the merchandise. So Canseco further tweeted, "The eBay ad will read, slightly used middle finger with 462 home runs, could be used as a stirring straw for drinks." Meantime, reports also say there is video of his finger falling off and that his manager has bought the video, so maybe he's looking to sell that too. What Canseco did not say is that he had help hitting those 462 home runs, admitting that he used performance-enhancing drugs during his career. He even wrote a book about it, probably with that finger. Also, his finger isn't the only thing he's lost. Despite earning millions, Canseco's Florida house has been foreclosed on. He has 2 failed marriages, and for a while, he lost custody of his son. Finally, selling body parts, well, that's a violation of eBay's terms and conditions, apparently. So it's possible Canseco may have to auction off the finger at some schlocky baseball card event anyway. And so Jose Canseco is our favorite person of the day. Coming up, the big business of online dating and its perils. You're watching Arise Exchange. Stay with us.
One of the great things about Arise News, it is truly a multicultural global channel that is paying attention to communities of all different kinds, not just here in the United States, not just in Africa, but all around the world, as we're giving a voice to the people that don't traditionally have the kind of a voice that a mass media organization can have. You're getting here at Arise News that you're not going to find at the other networks is a unique perspective, and I think that's part of what Arise is here to do.
Arise serves underserved communities by bringing them news, information, sports, and entertainment from places that are becoming part of the world economy, that are becoming a part of the world voice, and decisions that are affecting things in the world that people care about. They care about the economy. They care about safety and security. And if you come to Arise and you watch our broadcast, these are the things we're going to bring to you every day, 24 hours a day.
Informative. The U.S. economy is on the right path, and the wizard of the Fed is leading the way.
We started our companies originally to create something that made a positive difference.
Compelling.
I became very successful, not allowing myself to be average.
Our favorite person of the day when we pick one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reason. Yeah, he sort of lost all business. Investors came back from the long weekend tanned, rested, and ready to buy stocks. Entertaining money daily, Arise Exchange. How big is online dating? Get this. It is now a $1,250,000 business a year. That's how much people pay in user fees to join it, according to the statistics Brain.com. However, the Better Business Bureau says consumers should be aware. And joining us now to talk about this is Claire Rosenzweig from the Better Business Bureau. Thank you for coming here
My
to talk
pleasure.
about this. There are a lot of complaints people have about dating sites that go beyond the fact that your partner shows up and is 15 years older than he or she said online. Can you walk us through some of the perils here of these dating sites?
It's all about what you do before, during, and after the quote relationship with this company. People have expectations when they go into a dating service. And even if the company is perfectly legitimate, there are still things that you need to be aware of. And then layer on top of that, when there are scammers out there who would love to take advantage of people who are in that kind of a vulnerable state.
Right, people playing sort of the Lonely Hearts Club game,
exactly.
Which is an old game, predates the internet for a long time. But as far as these dating companies go, I've read things that they put on fake profiles of people, and that they send you these fake profiles and say so-and-so is interested in you. Has that been going on?
Well, when you have legitimate companies, they're still going to be asking you to put up a profile and do these things. And even with a legitimate company, you're going to run into problems with that sometimes because these are technology companies after all, so there will be glitches. The main thing is, though, as a consumer who wants to do this, is to do your research first. Because you can go to the Better Business Bureau and see what we say about a company. You can go to complaint details that we have listed and actually see what other consumers have experienced with these companies.
And among the other problems is that when you try to cancel your membership, because maybe you found the love of your life and you want to be off this dating site, sometimes it's hard to cancel.
Or you might run into a situation where you're not getting the service that you expected. Some of those profiles that you're talking about, maybe they're old, maybe they're stale, maybe you wanted to get off and your profile's still up there and you want to get out of it. So how do you, quote, break up with the company? And, the problem is that sometimes when you go into an arrangement with a company, you're signing up for terms of service, and sometimes they may not be as clear as they could be, or totally lots of questions that you should be asking. So you could be walking into the middle of a billing cycle and not realize it. So how do you cut off the bill? And that is one of the, not top complaints, but one of the more frequent complaints that we get at the Better Business Bureau system all over the country. Because keep in mind, the Better Business Bureau covers all of North America. So terms of service, how do you get out of the billing cycle? That's one of the key things.
These are questions you should ask. So so you want to sign up for one of these sites. What are the things you should look for? First, you ask your friends what their experiences were, I would think.
Ask your friends. I mean, that's basic. Try to find out as much as you can about the company. And you can look online, look at the BBB. We have complaint details. You can read all kinds of things about these companies, good, bad, and sometimes ugly.
And I also wonder about privacy. And because if you take away from the online sites and now just go to these apps, for example, Tinder, which charges you nothing. So you're saying, well, how do they make money? They data mine you, don't they?
Well, that's the key. Free is not always free. You have to check privacy policies for a couple of reasons. Number one, you might walk in and it's free, but then you might have high pressure sales tactics trying to get you to buy other levels of service. So beware of that. Again, that's one of those red flags. The other thing, too, is, which I just want to make sure that people understand, is even when you get into a service and things seem to be going well, some red flags to keep in mind is if you meet somebody, you like them. I mean, keep in mind, a scammer is trying to cultivate you to like them, and all of a sudden they're madly in love with you, or there's some family emergency.
How do you guard against that?
Well, just
do these sites protect you from that at least? Are there any sites working on trying to keep the scammers out?
There are some sites that say that they do background checks, et cetera, but this is all part of your research when you're looking into a company to get a level of comfort on your own.
I don't know what background check. I've been on a few. I don't know what background check they're doing. It's click a few things and give them your credit card.
And that's why you want to see what other people are saying about the company. But anybody who, I don't care who it is, if somebody has just met you and all of a sudden they're either asking you for money, that's a red flag. Don't do it. Don't fall into it.
But you also need to be, I mean, how much fault is that of these sites, though? That's somewhat common sense. And I know there are people who are lonely and want this to work out, but how many people are falling into that trap?
Well, that's why I'm saying when you're dealing with a perfectly legitimate company, there are things that you have to watch out for, namely understand what you're walking into, eyes wide open, and know how to get out of it if you want to. But also there's behavior online. not to be lured off of that safe website onto, what could
dangerous
be
subways.
a dangerous subplace.
Okay.
And
Claire, and we have to wrap up. Claire, people can go to your website, the Better Business Bureau, to learn more about this.
bbb.org, and also just protect yourself physically too. If you're going to
Absolutely.
meet anybody anywhere,
In public.
and tell a friend where you're going.
Okay, Claire, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tomorrow on Rise Exchange, the Federal Open Markets Committee releases its official minutes from its Fed policy meeting on Wednesday afternoon. We will bring you all of the details. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching Rise Exchange. See you tomorrow. Stay right there.